Well, good morning and good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the U.S. Cloud Application Development Partner Community Call for September 2016. If you're new to the Cloud Application Development community, which you all are, because this is a brand new community for us, you'll know that in the past we've had a U.S. Azure community, and due to demand and the growth of Azure, and there's so many topics to cover, this year we've gone ahead and actually sliced up the community into 4 different communities. And so for those of you that are passionate about Cloud Application Development, sometimes known as the PaaS side of the world, but it also includes a whole lot more, we're excited to offer this community for you here today. So to get things started, my name is Nick Johnson. I'm one of the community leads here in our partner-facing team in the U.S. We know that there are some of you that are joining us from outside the U.S. You're very welcome to be here as well. We're glad that you're able to learn and to grow from these communities. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get to our speakers for the day. First, I need to let you know that this call is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. So if you don't consent to being in a recorded environment, go ahead and disconnect now. We will post this recording later for you to download and to access if you need to share this with your friends or come back and review any information that you want to do at a later time. The second question that we always get is, are the slides available? Yes, they are. In fact, in your browser window, down in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a button that says Messages, if you haven't found that already. When you click on that Messages button, you'll see that I've posted a link over to our Yammer group, which you'll learn more about in a second. And on that Yammer group, you can download the slides for today's call. You can give us feedback about the call. You can come in and ask us questions anytime, even when we're not on the call. So make sure that you're leveraging that Yammer group. We also will have today the opportunity for you to submit Q&A for our speakers. So down in that Messages button, you'll see the option to type in a question at any point during the call. So if you have any feedback or comments or questions for our speakers during the call, go ahead and type that in, and you'll either get a direct response or we'll be able to take that call directly audibly over the phone and do that with you that way. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce you to one of our newest community leads on the cloud application development side of things, Wayne Smith. And Wayne is going to walk us through a little bit of what we're going to do today. Wayne, welcome.
Thank you, Nick, for that. So first of all, thank you and everybody welcome for coming to this. And I'd like to thank you again for taking some time out to spend with us. We know the pressures of the 2 T's, which are timelines and tasks, so I'm pleased that you've decided to spend some time with us. As you can see with the community here, we have a couple things going on. First is welcome, then we'll have some NPN updates, DevOps, and then we'll talk about a great new program, which is Visual Studio Everywhere. Nick, next slide, please. And one more, please. So I'll make a shameless plug for all of us for our collaboration tool and how we're planning on disseminating some of this information through our Yammer tool. You see 3 links here, each starting once you get through the AKMS with US App Dev, Yammer for the general information, and then for this particular call, there's the US App Dev call. And then finally, an even better plug for our dev blog. You'll see my partner in crime there, Jonathan Gardner, who has a post up on the blog. Please take a look at that and give us some feedback on that. So as we move forward, we're going to start with an NPN competency update by Rodrigo.
Hi, great, Wayne. Thank you so much for the introduction. I want to welcome again the people who are in this call and thanking for you to take the time to learn more about this great community that will help our customers to move applications to the cloud as well as leverage developer services to help them to achieve more. And one of the transformations that we're going through as we speak is for those who are partners in the U.S., and even partners outside the USA, you have been fulfilling all the criteria and requirements to become or to obtain a given competency within the NPN program. Recently, about 3 weeks ago, the competency application lifecycle management has been migrated, has been rebranded or renamed to DevOps. Since ALM is one of the components of a bigger story related to DevOps, and how can we better help our customers to develop better apps, to improve their development processes by the adoption of practices and changing culture and tools. We are also lining up our competency through that motion, and that's why we rebranded and name it as DevOps. All the requirements to fulfill to help you obtain the competency are going to change along the next 6 to 12 months. So our invitation here for you this morning or this afternoon, depending where you are in the world, is to keep an eye on such updates. But the announcement today is to let you aware that Microsoft is lining up all our messaging and spirit with the DevOps message going forward. With that, I would like to advance a few slides so we can continue the discussions related to the Visual Studio Everywhere program, which, by the way, is a program that has been developed to help DevOps partners to carry customer conversations through different funding vehicles. So we're going to detail a little bit. So when you think about the customer journey of bringing them or making them an unknown to unknown customers, up to the very end where the customers are consuming Visual Studio licenses and or Azure services, we want to make sure that the partners on this community are aware of those vehicles and how to get reimbursed for some of the activities they're gonna run with their customers along the journey. So Visual Studio Everywhere is a program that is available in Pi in the USA that will help partners to uncover new opportunities or to identify new business opportunities through demand generation activities such as webcasts, lunch and learns, workshops, or hands-on experiences on the cities and geos they are located, but also will help them to uncover or to better qualify an opportunity through the proof of value. We're going to detail that in a few seconds. Can't reinforce enough that some of you might be aware of additional programs that are available for partners to engage with customers, such as the Azure Everywhere, and also deployment planning services and all the field-led nominations that you might be engaged with some of our field sellers to, again, help our customers to uncover how Visual Studio and or Azure might be the answer for a given business and technology challenge. So this is just a brief overview. I'm going to ask Nick to advance for the next slides. So just to give you a little bit more details, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have in the Yammer group. So I encourage you to visit our Yammer group and post your questions there, because your question might be the same question that other partners might have, and we have a forum to answer those. But in a little bit more details, we are expecting that partners will leverage Visual Studio Everywhere to host workshops and or proof of value. So the workshops is a one-to-many type of engagement. So think that you as a partner in Omaha, you might have a set of customers that you believe might benefit from learning how to develop a new application leveraging Visual Studio and or Xamarin plus Azure. How your customers can migrate applications to the cloud by leveraging infrastructure as a services or microservices. How DevOps might become an answer to help your customers streamline the application delivery process by increasing the quality of the applications, reducing the technical debt, etc. Or how our customers, by increasing the developer productivity, might impact the business by reducing the time to analyze the root cause of a problem, or to expedite the application troubleshooting by leveraging features in Visual Studio and Xamarin Family Set. Or eventually, your customers in your geo or in your region might require you a custom workshop. So the idea here is to provide you the baseline or the foundation for you to have great customers engagement. All the assets to help you, such as PPTs or presentation, email marketing to help you invite your customers and to thank them for attending one of your workshops have been also made available in the Yammer group in the partner community. So make sure that you're part of such community. And previously, Wayne has shared the link on how to subscribe to that. So if the workshops are the vehicle to help us to touch a vast majority, a big number of customers in a one-to-many type of engagement, eventually you might identify customers who need a special attention. So the proof of value becomes the vehicle, becomes the tool for you to engage in a one-on-one type of engagement, in a one-on-one type of interaction with your customer, where you're going to spend a day or two within that customer, either assessing a given situation and planning for the deployment of a given technology. You're going to run a mini hackathon where we're going to gather all the people from your customer in a room where we're going to uncover, we're going to debate about a given problem and how technology can be the answer, but also run a small proof of concept. So what can be done in a day or two that will allow your customer to uncover or to envision the path of the adoption of a given technology. What we're expecting for you, this become a tool for you to uncover new consultancy or services opportunity. For Microsoft, what we're expecting you that you come back to us with a $30,000 opportunity in Visual Studio and or Azure consumption in the next 12 months. If you are a DevOps partner or a Xamarin Premier partner in the USA, with an MPN ID, you're more than welcome to leverage those programs to help you carry the conversation. I'm going to ask Nick to advance to the upcoming slide. So a great reminder for you: how do you're gonna engage, you're gonna leverage the intellectual property that has been developed by Microsoft, and by the way, intellectual property developed in partnership with partners that are running the engagements already. We're going to host discussions like this to help you spread the word and make sure that you leverage those vehicles to interact with your customers. And while you run workshops with your customers, we're going to pay you $3,000 by doing that. And when you interact with your customer in a one-on-one engagement through the proof of value, we're going to pay you $2,000 for you to engage with your customers. Again, what we're expecting as outcomes, we're expecting you that if you're a managed partner, you're gonna submit new opportunities into Partner Connect or the new generation of PSX, as you might know. We want to know who have you been talking to. We want to see the pictures of those workshops to make sure that you are complying for a great execution. But also we want to get back a few documents. So documents that are part of the assets that have been made available to you. Also, and just to reinforce, available into the Yammer group. But most importantly, we want to make sure that this become an opportunity for Microsoft as well as for you. So again, to run further engagements such as bigger proof of concepts, or eventually you have in front of you an opportunity for you to modernize a given customer app. In the next slide is just a recap about best practices that we have seen so far from partners executing or applying for funding through the Visual Studio Everywhere program. So in the next slide, we're going to see just waiting for Nick. So great, thank you. So some of the best practices. We would invite you to incorporate the workshops as part of your marketing plan. So when you look ahead on your go-to-market strategy, how are you going to market from a marketing mix perspective? And make sure that the workshops are one of the vehicles. Practice with your team. So download the material. Make sure that you can access all the content. You're comfortable in delivering such content to your customer. Don't do your rehearsal in front of your customer, because we have seen customers complaining about the ability of a given partner to truly land a given message. Also, partner with a licensing partner, such as an LSP. LSPs, they hold the keys of the contracts. They hold the keys of very, very important information about the customer consumption. So you as a consultancy partner, you might see a lot of value while you partner with one of them to uncover new opportunities for both of you. So from a proof of value perspective, we would encourage you to see that as a follow-up tool. So when customers attend your workshop, you offer the proof of value as a next step, as a next logical engagement for you to continue carrying such conversation with your customer. And obviously, use POV as part of a bigger engagement. We have seen partners proactively offering assessments and or small proof of concepts as part of bigger project where such component is funded by Microsoft. Just always reminding you that we will always be searching for opportunities to boost Azure consumption and or help our customers to consume more Visual Studio through the several licensing programs that we have available. So with that, I finish my interaction here along the call. I want to thank you, the partners who have been engaging in the Visual Studio Everywhere program so far. And again, we will always be available to answer your questions through the Yammer community. So Wayne, thank you for the opportunity. I will handle the word for you again.
Thank you. And now, coming up, we have Tiago presenting information on DevOps and Microsoft. Tiago.
Hey everyone, thank you again for the opportunity to present to you today. I'm Tiago, a senior engineer and technical evangelist here at Microsoft Corp. I'm in a team that works a lot with upcoming and newer things from Microsoft and from the industry altogether. So about a year ago, I started looking into DevOps and been doing a lot of presentations looking at how Microsoft does DevOps and then aligning some of the tools that we have to see how we can integrate into DevOps a lot more. And today I'm going to give you an overview of DevOps and some demos as well. So the agenda for my part is an overview, some tools and products that for Microsoft that align to it. It should be pretty easy to understand, resourcing, and then I have separately a few things around value stream mapping and enabling DevOps practices. Cool. So just to start, it's really hard to describe DevOps because it encompasses so much. It's sort of a transformation that involves people, process, and products, and in this order. So the order that we have there, 1, 2, 3, is deliberate, mainly because the people part is the culture part of things, where you would get a whole lot of teams inside the company, development, testing, operations, business, and other teams working together and efficiently to help deliver better and faster results to customers. And that depends on quite a few different types of things that you can do. It can be just a cultural shift where developers, testers, and operations, they're all responsible for the same part of the code that gets released all the way from development to when it's running in production. And if something breaks in production, they're all responsible for fixing it and getting feedback from customers about that feature. And that's a big change that we did inside of Microsoft and quite a few of the teams, is where they've separated the teams themselves to be more aligned to the features that they were building, and operations and development, they're all sitting together and testing it. They're all in the same area, responsible for the same part of code. And when something happens in production, they're all responsible for fixing it as soon as possible and learning from that. So that there's that first part, that's one very important part, which is the people and culture part. Then there's processes where you break down the different things that have been identified from the industry that mean that will help you with that culture and that responsibility of delivering value to customers faster and better. So we're going to cover a few of those today. And then finally, products. Of course, you can do everything by just writing PowerShell or writing code, but there's quite a few products from Microsoft and external to Microsoft that help you quite a lot with that. So I'll cover those too. So this slide is there's quite a lot in here. I just want to have it there for you, and you'll be able to download all of these slides. There's a lot of hidden slides in here that you can then choose from if you want to review, or if you're presenting to someone with these slides, then you can choose different ones. This one is one that I like just to call out a few of the inefficiencies that you get from not implementing a DevOps inside the organization. So you can review that later, but there's quite a few numbers here that mean that that show you the inefficiencies. And then one thing that we always like to call out is Puppet Labs. They release every year. They've been doing that for 3 years, I think. The State of DevOps report, where they run a lot of interviews with different sizes of companies, and the benefits that and then they find out the benefits that those companies are getting from implementing DevOps practices. So, for example, there are 200 times more frequent deployments. Recovery is 24 times faster from failures, and a few others. So, if you're interested in that, go to puppetlabs.com and find the State of DevOps report. These numbers are from the latest one, from the 2016. Cool. So some of the benefits that we saw in the previous slide, but shortening the cycle time, so you can deliver quickly to customers and still being confident that what you're deploying is of high quality. You can optimize resources, and finally improving the quality and availability of what's in production. And you also, once you have it in a way that it's automated and the whole team is organized around delivering to production quality code in a short time frame, then you start adding, or you could do it at the same time as having telemetry on all of that and learning from that telemetry to implement those changes at the development time. And you don't depend on just learning from customers when they send you an email with or to support to complain about something. You're actually learning from production and implementing those on the development cycle and taking that all the way through to production again. So when we're looking at that, how do you map from that people culture change to an actual implementation of something real from using products, right? So the practices is the mapping between those two. And I have the next slide is just listing some of the key practices that we identified. And this is just to show you how you can then start thinking of mapping. How do you go from a culture, then infrastructure as code, and then you can implement that infrastructure as code using Azure ARM templates, and then creating Azure websites and SQL database, or if you're using Puppet or Chef, you can use a Chef recipe or a Puppet definition to create a whole Linux environment on Azure and things like that. The same with continuous integration, right? You can use Visual Studio Team Services with Git, and then Jenkins for the actual building of the code, or the code could be on GitHub and using Visual Studio Team Services to build that code. And if it's Java, then you can use Gradle from VSTS. So there's a few options on the product side, but it's always interesting to map that to a proven practice. So here is a good slide that we have that lists a few of the DevOps practices that we've identified and we've worked with for the past year. This year, from this month on, in my team, we're focusing on more advanced DevOps practices like testing in production using feature flags and et cetera. But it's important to cover the more basic ones here. There's a link at the bottom there, but there's a few more resources later in this presentation to show you how to learn more about those. And I'll cover in the next few slides just I'll talk through some of these and what they mean before I go into demos. Before that, let me just cover, of course, Azure is the biggest platform from Microsoft for you to deliver the solutions that you are building in both Microsoft Azure and then Azure Stack with shared resource templates and shared types of compute and platforms that you can deploy your solution to. That's definitely the location to deploy. And Azure itself, it has quite a lot of support for those types of practices. So if you're thinking of infrastructure as code, just using ARM templates to define what your infrastructure should look like between multiple environments, and all you change is the configuration and the scale of those, you are implementing infrastructure as code. So the whole team knows what an environment is meant to look like just from looking at that JSON file that defines the environment. And this already is a pretty good change so that the whole team is aware of what production is going to look like. And the only thing that changes is the scale. So Azure supports that, and of course there's we can have a whole conference on just what Azure does and what it can support, and I'm sure you're well aware of what it does. But that is one of the main tools from Microsoft to support any DevOps practice. It is very open, as you know. We have support for multiple open source and third-party tools, Puppet Labs, Mesos for Docker, and quite a lot of other things across applications, frameworks, databases, and infrastructure. Another part that I think you're aware of. And then the one that I'm going to show off a little bit more today is Visual Studio Team Services and Team Foundation Server. So they're one and the same. The code behind them is pretty much the same. Team Foundation Server is just a version of VSTS that you deploy yourself on premises if you want. So you can have your own version of Team Foundation Server. Or VSTS, Visual Studio Team Services, is its hosted version. So it's a version that's hosted by Microsoft for you and run by us, so you don't have to worry about deploying, maintaining the infrastructure and the database that sits behind TFS that's handled by Microsoft. And with VSTS, then there's quite a lot of features that you can pick and choose from. You don't have to use it for everything, but you can choose to use it to plan and track your team work with Kanban boards and sprint planning and work item tracking and etc. For source code, package management, and quite a lot of other things, builds and release management. And I'll cover a lot of these during my demo later on. And just like Azure, VSTS has a lot of extensibility and integration. So we do have a marketplace, a Visual Studio marketplace. And on the right there in the middle box, you can see there's 171 VSTS extensions. There's probably more now since that slide was created. And you can use that to integrate into external solutions. So, for example, if you want to use VSTS for the code, but you want the builds to be done by Jenkins, and then VSTS comes back in again for release management, that can be done because we have quite a lot of support for extensibility with Jenkins. If you want to push a message to a Slack channel to say that a build is done, that can be easily implemented as well through VSTS. So this is just to show that just like Azure, it's very extensible. One thing that we've been pretty successful with is just running value stream mapping. So I thought I'd mention it here pretty quickly. Is VSMs, so value stream mapping, are something that's been around since the Agile, in where you map. In our case, we've been doing it with customers and partners where you map from just after the decision has been made to implement a feature or create a new product, and then the developers creating the code, and all the way through to that being in production. And this is, you usually go with a solution that already exists instead of trying to create it for something that's coming up. So by looking at that, you can go and talk to your customer and go, where is your code hosted at the moment? How do you test it? How do you build it? How is it deployed to environments? What environments do you have? And by having the right people in that meeting, from the development team, the testing, if they have a separate testing team, operations, and the right dev leads or managers from each one of those teams in the room, it's good so that you can help them identify areas where you can use Azure or VSTS to help them reduce the time frame from something going from development to production, and improving the quality. So if you might want to add testing in there, more automated testing, so that they don't have to do everything manually, and etc. So value stream mapping is something to look into if you want to find a way to get your customers looking into VSTS, for example. You take the approach of, let's just see what you have at the moment and where we can provide value. So you don't have to say you need to use all of VSTS, or all of Azure, but these are parts that we can help you inside what you already have. Or once you do that for an existing solution, then they might start thinking about it for an upcoming one. So VSM is pretty interesting to look into, and if you want, I can give you some resources. I don't think I have that in the list of resources, but if you want to learn more about it, then let me know. All right, so let's just cover some of the practices. These are some of the more fundamental ones. So continuous integration. This is an idea where you merge all of the copies from the developer code with a shared mainline trunk. So for example, developers might be developing a feature, or everything is in the master branch inside their Git workflow or in TFVC. But the idea is to get them to merge that working copies of their developer code into that mainline as often as possible, and produce a build that and tests, unit tests that will pass and be successful. So this makes the team, and this could include also ARM templates and stuff from ops as well, and PowerShell scripts or things that are coming from the ops team as well. But as the idea is to get the team into a mind frame where they will do small but continuous improvements into the code, and always merging that into a main line that can at any time be deployed to an environment like a dev environment or a test environment. And this helps them to make smaller changes, so it's easier to merge, and also it helps with getting a mindset of continuously deploying the value to customers in production. So it's not really valuable to the customer until it's in production, right? Until they can use it. So anything that can help with getting more features into production quicker, the better. So this continuous integration is a good starting point for that. And then we have automated testing. This is sort of self-explanatory. You can run unit testing was sort of part of continuous integration. Unit testing, of course, is one type of testing. Load testing, integration testing, and sometimes even manual testing comes into here, but a more scripted one where exploratory testing also goes into here. But as much as you can automate without and being careful not to introduce too many flaky tests where it sort of randomly fails, but testing that can ensure your team that the code that's getting built and deployed to an environment has passed a good level of quality before it makes it into any users, even if it's internal users. It's also helpful so that you once you implement it properly, you have the confidence that what's in production. And production could be a website, could be a service, could be things deployed inside of a bunch of virtual machines. It could be a SharePoint site. It could be a mobile application, right? So this is pretty generic. So that's a second one that's pretty important to get look into. The next one is continuous deployment. So far we've been building and testing the code, but continuous deployment, that's where you are taking that package that was created by your dev and ops team of the definition of what an environment is, plus the actual code or updates to the code, that gets deployed to an environment continuously. So as soon as the team decides to merge, say once a day, into the master branch, all of the changes that the team have worked on that day, that gets picked up by a solution, in our case Visual Studio Team Services, and then deployed to an environment like a QA environment. And then the way to evolve that is release management, where you continuously deliver that same package of code to multiple environments. And the main things that change here might be scale or some configuration settings, right? So the username, password, and then connection strings and things like that will change between environments. So from that source repo, creates one build with one version of the code that then goes into dev, to stage, and to production.
Tiago, I'm going to jump in here just for a second. It looks like the slides stopped advancing to match what you're presenting, and we want to make sure that we're getting that aligned up here. So I'm going to take over as presenter for a moment, and then allow you to grab it back from me here. So
okay.
Just a moment here.
Okay. Start sharing again. Let me know if you see infrastructure as code. That's the slide I was in. What slide are you seeing now, Nick?
We're actually not seeing a slide at all. Do you want to share your desktop real quick?
Okay.
Folks, thanks for your patience while we get this resolved. We want to make sure that you can see the slides here. So give us just a second.
Okay, I shared the desktop. I guess the slides are loading again.
Yeah, it looks like we got it resolved there. So if you want to take over presenter on those slides again, then you can move ahead and pick back up with the presentation. Sorry for the interruption there, but we want to make sure we get everybody able to see what's going on.
Cool. At the moment, it's still loading on my side, but it should be up pretty soon. While that's loading, just to finish off on infrastructure as code, so that's where you use some software development processes to manage the deployment and configuration of systems. So I talked about ARM templates, and you check in those definitions of an infrastructure should be into code. Oh, here we go, automated testing. So let me take over as presenter. And here we go, infrastructure as code. Right. So you take that definition and then check that into code, and that becomes part of your source code. And when things get deployed to environments, then that infrastructure is defined by what's in that code itself, instead of just being an admin that creates an environment at random and tries to match it to other environments or most of the time, all the environments are very different with versions and everything. And sort of as part of it sort of goes together with continuous integration is configuration management, where not only you're defining the infrastructure, but how what's inside that infrastructure is also defined by this. So think about things like both Chef and Puppet have this, but we also have PowerShell DSC, the desired state configuration, and we have a DSC automation pool server on the Azure side to make sure that the infrastructure that you're creating has the same versions of things deployed into that. Of course, if you're using platform as a service on Azure, say an app service for a web app, you can define in the actual ARM template what the version of Java or the version of .NET that's being meant to be supported by those. But if you're deploying into virtual machines, then you still have to configure what goes inside those machines by using images, or if you're using Docker, then you define what Docker image that's meant to be using and things like that. So a combination of continuous integration, infrastructure as code, and configuration management is also a pretty good practice. Okay, so just before that, I'll show you in pretty quickly my desktop here, and show you just a couple of environments that I have to show you what I mean by some of these. Nick, let me know when you can see my desktop.
It is visible now.
All right. Okay, so here I have, just to show you, an ARM template, the Parts Unlimited sample that we have. And this template here, it's based on, for example, demo environment setup. I'm defining a SQL server on Azure SQL DB, basically. App Insights for the website that we're deploying to, a hosting plan to host that website. And you can see here that parameters are being passed in for things like the SKU, the plan name, the working size, and etc. And that maps to Azure, the definitions that you need to create for a hosting plan or an app service plan. Website, that defines an Azure web app, and it depends on the hosting plan, the SQL DB, and App Insights being there, and some rules for the website as well. So if you've used ARM templates, this makes a lot of sense for you. But otherwise, this is how you define a whole environment or infrastructure for things to be deployed to. So a lot of times, as part of a continuous deployment environment, you would first make sure that the environment that you're deploying to matches how this has been defined in this code. So just to show you an example of infrastructure as code here. Here on this other solution, I have word count. It's just a simple sample that we have. And what it does is it will generate randomly some words from a short list of letters, and then try to and then push that to a word count system, and then that service will pick that up and tell you how many of that word has showed up before. So I have both a stateful and a stateless solution. So the service here is, if I zoom in here so that you can see, the service here is stateful, where it's keeping the list of words and the counts for them in state. And then this web service is basically just a website with an index here to make calls to that service. So to show you here the branches that I'm working with, I have a dev and a master branch. While I'm working in dev here, I'll just make a change here. So talk DevOps, continuous delivery. So here I'm just making a small change to this index.html on my solution, and I'll commit this. So basically from Visual Studio, I'm committing to the dev branch that's on my Visual Studio Team Services, updating title, commit that. and then I'll sync it up with the server. So I committed it locally, and now it's going to VSTS. So that's going to trigger a few things. So if I go back here to my Mac and show you here, one thing that we'll see is this is on the Visual Studio Team Services side, where a whole team can be working on the same solution. And if I refresh this page, you see that I've updated dev just now. So that's the change that I made to the code. It's committed here, and I can create a pull request. So I can say, I'm happy. This is the continuous integration part. Is I'm happy with the code that I pushed into my dev branch, and I want people to review it into the master branch. So this is the one that combines all the changes that people have been doing all day. So I'll create that pull request. Given I'm the only one on the team, I'm going to approve this, and it looks really good to me. And I'll complete that change here. So basically that merged into the master branch all the changes that I had in dev. And of course, if there were merge conflicts, I would figure that out here and etc. So VSTS has pretty good support for the actual code side if you're using Git, and also TFVC. Of course, you don't have to use code from VSTS. You can use GitHub or others if you want to use just the build or release management or testing capabilities, but it is very, very powerful, the support that we have for Git inside of VSTS, especially if you're doing, you're not open sourcing the solution and use just internal teams doing a lot of code. To show something else just for teamwork support, this is the actual Visual Studio Online team itself. They have their own instance of VSTS, and there's a lot of teams inside the VSTS team here, right? This is the dashboards team, so the teams that build the dashboards for VSTS, and you can see how they've created a bunch of different dashboards, and this one is the sprint health, just to show you how they are actively tracking what their current sprint is and how it's going, and they have the bugs per sprint, resolved bugs, and active bugs, service incidents. So they're tracking all of that inside of Visual Studio Team Services here. It doesn't align directly with DevOps per se, but it's good so that you know that the agile support that VSTS provides you is really good. So once you have that nailed, then you start implementing some of the DevOps practices. Okay, so now that we've made that change, the next step that we have in Visual Studio Team Services are builds. So you can see here, my updating title has built from the dev branch. So I have a build definition that's looking at the dev branch itself and running every time, just to make sure that I haven't broken anything just by making changes on my dev build. But when I merged, then it kicked off this new build here for the master branch. You can see it's still going. It's updating the service fabric now. So this basically is going to update that, make that change that I made on the code, and deploy that to a service fabric deployment. Let me just go and edit so that you can see what that looks like. So in a build definition, you add a bunch of build steps. For a solution like this is pretty straightforward. NuGet, restore, build it, run some unit tests if it has unit tests, and then finally update the service fabric with that new package that was created by these build ones here. And finally, you make that available if you need to the release, or if you need to download the output of it. So that's what it's doing. And once this build is done, then release management will pick it up. So this is pretty good support from VSTS for you to create automated builds. So if we look here in the triggers, you see it's just a tick box on continuous integration. You can add some filters here, path and branch filters, but basically this build from master is looking at the master branch, and I have the dev one looking at the dev branch. And it triggers a new build every time a change is made into that branch. So the whole team will know if something has failed from a build as soon as they start merging everything into the master, which is a good thing for the DevOps implementation. And VSTS has pretty good support for Azure, so you can do web app deploy, you can do infrastructure, ARM templates deployments, and then like you saw here, that's the service fabric deployment example that I have. So it's basically, let me see, once it's done building, then it triggers a release, And this example here, there's only one environment, production, where it deploys that to production. So it'll make that update to the dev track and then deploy to production. It just deploys that same package to the production environment. And this is also triggered on the build from master build. So it's very well integrated into our build system. But you can also create triggers from outside. It doesn't have to be under artifacts here. It doesn't have to be from a build per se. You can do builds from GitHub, Jenkins, and other places as well. So it'll trigger this release, and then release itself becomes just a workflow manager of a release that you want to do to multiple environments. And don't be too attached about the environment being an actual environment. You can create multiple environments here that could be production, database, production web, and you can say they all deploy at the same time, and then you can say if this deployment here, by deployment conditions, this environment or these environments will run after the release has been created, but these other ones will be only after another environment has finished. So you can create a pretty big workflow of how you want that thing to be deployed to production. Because on a real scenario, you'd have database changes that need to happen, infrastructure things that you need to do, some load testing before you decide to go into real production, and etc. So you can implement that as part of this. I even have an example here. If I go into this Xamarin one here that I have, so this is for not for Azure, but for an iOS Xamarin environment. I have 3 environments here, 4 environments. 2 go to Hockey app for alpha testers of my application, and then the other one deploys it to actually test flight to go to the App Store on the Apple App Store itself, and then finally this last one would be to run and promote it from test flight into the actual App Store as a submission for Apple to review. So you can do a whole lot of stuff with release management here. So now that release has probably done, so our release now just finished a couple of minutes ago, 4 minutes ago. So now we can see here that, let me just show you what that actually did from the logs. So that uploaded that target application from point 1 to point 2. So 2016.09.06.2 is the new one. And if we go here into the service cluster, we can see that it's already showing that new update there. So here's the site running. I had it before I clicked the deployment. And it's basically creating random words here and then adding them to there. So each one of those random words has been counted here, the number of times that it showed up. And if I refresh, we'll see that it's updated the website with my update to the code. So it went from my code push to a build with some unit tests in there to then release management to deploy into this new environment or the existing environment here. Cool. So this is what the actual environment looks like. So we could define this as infrastructure as code if we needed to as well. So just a few. I know that there's a lot in here and it's hard to cover in half an hour, but just to show you that both VSTS and Azure have a lot of support for a team that wants to define their infrastructure as code, do continuous integration, automated testing, continuous deployment, and release management and configuration management. All right. I don't need to go to the gym today. Cool. So I'll stop sharing my desktop here and just go back to the slide. And let me know if you can see the slides now, Nick.
They haven't come up. Looks like we ran into an issue with them again. So let me see if we can do that. While I get those loaded up, there was a question that came into the Q&A pane, and maybe you could take that for us. It's how do you balance continuous integration and deployment with branching? You know, how many branches should you have to be able to run continuous integration and sort of keep track of it all? What's a good strategy there?
Right. What we've seen a lot of teams that are looking at this continuous deployment is they use sort of the Git flow approach, where they create feature branches, and once that feature is done, then they merge back into master and delete that whole branch, so that becomes part of the master branch. So they try to merge to master as often as possible, but I understand that sometimes you don't want that feature to go into production. If you do have a lot of things that you're creating that you don't want customers to see, then there's also things that we're looking at now actually is feature flags, where you are deploying things to production and you know it's not going to break everything else because you're running tests on it, but the actual implementation is not exposed to any of the customers. It's behind a feature. So it could be as simple as an if-else statement that then later on you refactor and remove. But feature flags are being used quite a lot to allow you to keep merging things into master, but not making that feature available to customers yet because it's not fully implemented, right? So that's another thing that I've seen people do. But the idea is most of the teams that I've been working with that are implementing this continuous deployment, they're using feature branches. Once that's in a working state, they merge to master as often as possible.
Great, thank you. Looks like we should be back on the slides, so I can advance them if you want. We can walk through the last couple.
Yeah, so I can't see them yet, but I think that we're at the resources side, and that's the last few bits here. This first one, Microsoft's DevOps journey, I mentioned at the beginning that Microsoft ourselves have done quite a lot of changes internally in our engineering teams. So if you go to visualstudio.com/stories, you'll see that there's details from Bing, the Cloud and Enterprise team, and the Visual Studio Team Services teams on how they've changed. And there's 2 or 3 stories there that are really, really interesting to see. For DevOps practices, the practices that I've talked to now, there's the second one there, DevOps Fundamentals on Channel 9. That's me and a bunch of other people from my team and other teams. We're covering the different DevOps practices that I talked about today, but there's quite a lot of other resources. The link to the Parts Unlimited one. We're going to share all these decks with you, but there's another link there from just my part of it. Some simple applications, Parts Unlimited and Parts Unlimited MRP. The MRP one is a more open source version of it with Linux, Java, Tomcat, and Mongo. If you find issues when you're trying to deploy those, then just create an issue on the GitHub site and people will reply. There's some offerings that's from us there from the Premiere team. I'm not sure if that applies to you or not. And a few more free resources that aren't necessarily just from Microsoft, but from everyone else. So that's sort of a few of those are repeated anyway. Cool, so that's me. It's hard to cover a topic as broad as this in half an hour, but I hope you enjoyed it, and contact the team or contact me if you have more questions, and I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Tiago. And thank you to everyone for joining today. We're just getting started on this journey as an app dev community. We really want to hear from you. What do you want to hear from us? And so go out to that Yammer group, post a comment and say, hey, I'd love to see a blog post about this or a community call about that. Wayne, Jonathan, and our other leads on the app dev side are going to be paying close attention to that. So don't wait for the next call. Go out there, ask questions, dialogue with us. Let us know how we can help you. If you need anything to help you build up your skills, your sales and marketing efforts, your deployment planning, your customer engagements, we want to help you as a partner be successful. So make sure that you're doing that. Make sure you sign up to join us on Yammer. Sign up for our community call on a monthly basis. We'll be back generally about this same time every single month to bring you more information. And with that, we'll go ahead and close today's call and say thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.